Okay, there's no good place to jump off this new melody, beautiful melody that we are starting our live stream. And
Yes.
I'll explain in a second why we're starting late. So apologies. I see that people are already watching. So thanks everybody. But Matthew, can you please tell us what was the music that the show opened with?
Well, I guess the long and short of it is that we had, I put some of the videos on YouTube and they removed the first minute or so. And now the video is silent completely based on alleged copyright infringement of the music that appears at the beginning of the videos. And so hopefully to get around that problem, we come up with our own music. And that is the piece is a threnody, which is a song of lamentation for the dead. And this threnody is for uh, family Holocaust victims, family court Holocaust victims. And that's the music.
Wow, thank you. So as they say, talented people are talented in many areas. So you composed it, right? People don't know.
Well, yes, I'm actually, it's, I composed it. It's kind of in the style of the whole French Burgundian kind of avant-garde neoclassic, hopefully with commercial overtones type of vibe. But that's the music there. But I think our big topic for today is the discussion of what some folks call um, parental decompression syndrome. Now, as I say it, parental decompression syndrome, there is an acronym here. So that would be PDS. And for the benefit of the viewers at home, I've made notes here this time. But this parental decompression syndrome is something that family court parents experience in the wake of a family court proceeding. Now, if a parent, some of us, we go to court, you got to anticipate for at least 72 hours after the hearing, you're going to be caught in the embrace of this, what we call PDS or parental decompression syndrome, because apparently it takes the body about 72 hours to decompress in the wake of a family court hearing, because, of course, there's so much trauma associated with the family court hearing. And some of these are not early warning signs, but rather these are symptoms. And as a syndrome, we all know that a syndrome is just a grab bag of symptoms. And the symptoms that I've noted here from my research would be the biggest ones are depression and anxiety. And those are the two ones. And also, apparently, there's headache and abdominal cramps, fever, fatigue, appetite loss, sleep loss, and even diarrhea, which is kind of interesting. But these are these kind of ailments, these kind of symptoms are, part and parcel to the syndrome. That collectively, again, it's a grab bag of symptoms that we call PDS. But it's funny, in looking up on the internet, I found that there actually is something called DCS, which would be, I guess it's uh, decompression sickness, DCS, because you know how when the divers come up, and for the viewers at home, gases like nitrogen particularly exist in an equilibrium state when it's in the blood or dissolved in the tissues. But if there's a rapid, depressurization as you're coming up, that can cause bubbles. And of course, you don't want bubbles moving through your bloodstream, and it can be fatal. So this is not DCS. This is not to be confused with nitrogen bubbles in the blood, but rather this is PDS, which is parental decompression syndrome. Now, some people think this is just a pseudoscience. I don't know, but it is a common thread. And for better or worse, I've spoken to so many people that are involved in family court, and it seems to happen almost ubiquitously. And so I wanted to politely cross-examine my co-host, the world famous Roman Brick, and ask him, what are your thoughts on this? Is this PDS? Is it real? Is Phillips a pseudoscientist who's has no degree in microbiology and shouldn't be pontificating on these subjects? Or, well, you take the floor. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think it's very real, and it's thank you for this fascinating introduction. Of course, it's half jokingly, half seriously, but before I dive there, I want to acknowledge the audience. Vic is saying that PDS comes up as pericardial decompression syndrome, so we got it right with the DDS, the right, the deep state part of it, and even the first part is also related to deep state. And we want to elaborate further, not to be banned again on YouTube. Facebook so far is performing nice. John is thanking us for the show. Chris Woods is watching. Thank you, Chris. But now, I have to disclose to the audience, and that's the reason that we started late, and apologies for that. That I am experiencing the syndrome, however you call it, today, starting from yesterday, because yesterday I got an order in my case issued by Janet McFarland, my tormentor and tormentor of my children for the last over 2 years, which, as you can guess, is not favorable. Now, I am aware of my emotional state right now, so I don't want to talk about the order itself. That time will come. Um, it's a long order, which essentially is full-blown retaliation for all the exposure that I've been doing, for all my work on social media and beyond. It's a further assault, I would say, on my fatherhood and the childhood of my children. So as I mentioned, that has to be mentioned and preserved. I exposed Janet McFarland as being childless, um, feminist who gave illegal donations to politicians. Uh, Most recently, I exposed the fact that her court attorney, Paula Bondad, was exchanging payments with Sukaina Sorori, a private attorney with no less than 14 cases in front of McFarland. So another day, in another time, there would be outright bribery. So, and I knew the risks. So now I'm suffering full-blown retaliation by the court, by the corrupt court. Um, but I'm still processing, and I think the appropriate term for what I'm experiencing right now, to a large degree, is grieving. I am I am grieving the ongoing driving of a wedge between me and my children by the government, by corrupt government officials and court who promotes alienation. Um, but again, as to the details, the jurisprudence, if you can call it that, of the order, and the astonishing illegalities and violations of due process that took place, that's for another time. After I'll be able to detach. I respectfully agree with you. Every time that you go to court, you don't know what to expect. We know those who are experienced, right, who unfortunately experience with this type of governmental torture. They know that every time you go, you're stepping into a lion's or liar's den, right? You don't know whether your arm will be cut off, your leg, where the something will explode at your desk, right? Figuratively speaking. So it's a completely uncharted waters every time. You know that you will suffer. You just don't know how exactly and what other trick they will pull from their dirty sleeves. So it happened to me many times that I luckily, when you have court watchers, and everybody should have court watchers or friends attending with you. The when you talk and you do a sort of post mortem, right? Alluding back to the title of your beautiful composition, um, you realize that they saw things that you didn't even register with you, right? So because yeah,
Yes.
there's so much happening in the courtroom that, oh, did you notice that the judge did that? Did you notice that the guard did that? And another aspect of the same symptom that you so eloquently title is that sometimes people ask me questions, so you return to the normal mode when I'm not the victim. I'm more of an advisor, right, or a supporter, and people ask you questions, and they just when they describe in the movie that something slowly goes past, so you cannot even compute what you are being asked because you are reliving that traumatic experience right now in the courtroom. So this is very real. I heard people refer to that in different names. PTSD comes to mind, right? Post-traumatic stress disorder,
Yes.
or
Yes. Yes. Yes.
being yeah, being shell shocked, um, and it's comparable to a situation in the battle. So you're physically intact, but you're suffering tremendous assault against your entire being, right? Because you're the essence of you, because you're a father or a mother for that matter, right? And they attacked you, they attack your internal image of yourself as a parent, as a father, as a mother. Of course, your children suffer through all that. So yeah, you are shell shocked. So I'm not sure it's 72 hours or less or more. It's probably individual, but I know that I got the decision around 11 o'clock, I believe, yesterday, and I'm still processing. I'm still processing. It is hard. So yeah, so that's why I think that's why this topic is so important.
No, I want to say, thank you for explaining that. You said the acronym PTSD, post-traumatic stress, syndrome, and I guess post-traumatic stress disorder. I guess it is PTSD. Got to get my
Right.
acronyms correct here. But when I talk to parents, that is the thing that comes up most often. And we hear PTSD in the context of the fellows that are in Iraq, and bomb goes off and they're disoriented for a long time, and or maybe their beingness, so to speak, is not really situated in present time, but they're still kind of locked in the event of that incident. You see things like this, and I think that in many ways it's accurate. But if anything, there's a consciousness that as a parent, when you go into family court, you are literally, walking, headlong into the cannon's mouth. You're really charging into battle. It's a battlefield, it's a war zone. And like any war zone, you fear for your life. And that's why I think there are so many people that are experiencing the PTSD. And I think another effect of PTSD, of course, is when people get disoriented and they're not really, they may be lagging 3 seconds behind of the real where present time would be, so to speak. And what happens is I think that people don't really accurately observe what's happening. And if you try to be a court watcher in your own case, you're going to be the worst court watcher in your own case, because we really, I think that the stress is so high that it really inhibits our ability, the five ordinary senses, to perceive things. And, a lot of litigants, they after the fact, well, I don't remember the judge saying that, and it's because, well, just, suffice to say that you make a bad witness, for yourself as a parent in family court. And another thing, I think, now that I think about it, in family court, is this a phenomenon where there's always something on at the last minute, invariably on the eve of, the night before, the morning of. There's some thing you've never seen before, and it's dramatic and it's ex parte, and all the letters are capitalized and screaming at you, and it is part of the I think that can be traumatic for a lot of people. And I think also when this could get kind of deep and profound here, but you hear people talking about tyranny, right? What is tyranny? Well, it's a lofty concept in a Hollywood movie starring like Mel Gibson, where he paints half of his face blue and gets extension and wears a skirt, right? Or a kilt, I guess it would be. But tyranny, tyranny has a face, and when you go to family court, you are literally, face to face, vis-a-vis a tyranny. The judge is staring you down, and it can be an intimidating thing, because you realize the judge has the absolute right to exercise any amount of discretion that they want to in that given moment, depending, I don't know how much caffeine they have, and at that time, or how much fibers in their diet. I mean, some of the decisions, they just seem like such a gross and arbitrary, overbroad exercise of discretion. But anyways, I think these are the factors, and I don't know. I think it's a very real thing, and of course, the hour thing. I think you mentioned that it's not always 72 hours, but for some folks, it can go on till the next hearing, and they get re-stimulated on the same topic. So that's my thoughts. But
Yeah, listen, I agree with that completely. Sometimes, and I think you and I we talked about that offline, or actually many times, it takes time to process what really happened, even after you return back to daily functioning, right, to normal level, because you understand that you connect the dots and you understand the long playing game or scheme behind the scenes, played by the judge, played by the opposing attorney, and you understand why they did a certain thing that didn't compute initially, right?
mhm.
So it's not only the processing of the immediate trauma, but also processing of the scheme. And now to the point of tyranny, I respectfully completely agree. We are facing tyrants. Tyranny is not a concept that you can summarize in a word, but tyranny is executed by people, and they're all tyrants, big and petty and small. And when you face a person who actually violates you under the guise of law, that's traumatic in itself. People cannot believe. Another thing that needs to be stated, that's part of the design, right? I mentioned that many times, and it's a fairly, I think, famous quote or expression, that it's all done by design, right? And demoralized enemy is to subjugate. So the whole goal of the government and government players that we are facing in courts is to demoralize you, right? So because if you are discombobulated, if you are demoralized, if you don't understand what's going on, if you are depressed, if you're not functioning properly, if you allow yourself an outburst of anger, right, everything will be used against you, right? And especially they don't want us to fight, right? Fight, when I say fight, is of course not a violent fight, fight in courts, because if you don't challenge them, if you don't contest them, if you walk away, then they can continue pretending that everything is normal. And going back to the fundamental tenets of what we are doing here, as Orwell said, every tyranny stands on two legs, right? One is lies, another one is violence. What's lies? It's propaganda. It's narrative, right? And if nobody challenges the narrative, then this colossus is stable. But once the narrative gone, they have to resort to violence, and no regime can stand on violence alone for long. So that's why the narrative of lies is so important, and that's again why challenging the narrative, like we are doing here, and we are doing through our public work on Facebook and on YouTube, and and talking and meeting with people, and just voicing it. That's why it's so important, because it challenges the fake consensus created by the government. So we need to realize that, right? Part of the scheme, part of the design is exactly to keep that in that depressed state, in court, after court. I have also to add that you mentioned last minute, something comes at last minute. Uh, I experienced that during the hearings. Usually, the opposing attorney brings the most important thing at the last moment. Oh, listen, the kids reported this and that, so we should, change the time schedule, or there's something that's going on. So, and then you're not prepared, right? Or maybe you are lulled into some sort of complacency during the hearing. So it's all done by design. Yep. Um, Let me just pull up a couple comments. So thank you, Derek, for joining. Derek is saying the secret of freedom is in educating people. The secret of tyranny is keeping them ignorant. Yep.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Vic has another comment here. Thanks, everybody. We crossed a sizable amount of folks watching, so it's very important. Even though I won a state level appeal, the whole case wiped off the record or books. I'm left with disabling, burning headaches from anguish, stress, legal disgracing was most brutal. Yeah, so that's some call it legal warfare, right, or even lawfare. And if you're
Yes.
facing facing a well-funded opponent, right, or an opponent who is represented by the state, by state attorney, the wealthiest people say the money spouse, wins. I respectfully disagree with this notion. The spouse connected to the government or represented by the government or tapping into the government endless bottomless pockets. That's the spouse who wins, right? Nobody can outspend the government. So, and if you face an opponent whose legal representation is capable of producing endless legal papers, they just drown you in papers, right? And you see that all the time.
Hmm.
So it's very very real, and we can see it in the political realm, but we can see it in the personal realm as well. They just inundate you with papers, and you are constantly under stress. You cannot work, right? You cannot function. Many people lose their jobs. They go into the spiral when they cannot support themselves financially, and of course they cannot fight, and then the state wins by default. So
Yeah.
very real, very real. So thanks everybody. Matthew, not I like this topic. I don't like it personally because I'm experienced that right now as I speak. But
I
there's
know.
another thing you wanted to mention, right? And that's to give people an update on
Well,
your.
you know what I want to say? Oh,
Mhm.
yes, I did. And I also want to say real quick, you mentioned who is more likely to lose or gain custody, the one who is has more money or doesn't have more money. I really think that by and large anyway, the party that's going to lose is the party more capable of putting up a fight. If a party is capable of putting up a fight, I think they recognize that. And they say, if we take custody from that person, they're going to keep generating the revenue because they're going to be capable, or I guess maybe have the means to, to fight, so to speak, and, try to get custody back. So it's an interesting topic, but yes, I did want to segue into the class action lawsuit. And people have asked me questions, and there's been lots of things that have come up about the class action, and so I wanted to try to keep folks, posted about where we are. And one of the things, I had a conversation because I get calls all the time. I'm still getting calls, and people want to write a story or they want to do. There's a gal who wanted to do an interview. I talk to lots of folks who want to know about it, and I think the most important thing to know is that we're suing because we don't think that California is enforcing the Constitution. It's as if they have a policy, albeit unwritten, but it's such a comprehensive policy. It's so all encompassing. They do it, it seems, in every single courthouse. In fact, we know they do it all over the nation. They do it in Amsterdam, in Canada, in New Zealand, everywhere. And the policy is to ignore the Constitution. It never ever comes up. And, I have a client, right? And the client happens to be going to the airport. They're about to board a plane. Maybe they have a concealed firearm. Maybe they have a permit. Maybe they don't. You can see this may be a fact pattern for a lawsuit. And then somebody sues the airport, or the airport sues law enforcement. There's a million scenarios, right? Well, why am I bringing this up? If there were litigation about this imaginary fellow who wanted to board the airplane with a firearm, well, both sides would be talking about the Second Amendment. One side would say, well, the Second Amendment permits this because yada, yada, yada. The other side would say the Second Amendment doesn't sanction this kind of conduct because blah, 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 But the point is, in the briefs, you would see clearly it's a constitutional right, and that would be front and center. Well, what about the constitutional right to parent? It seems to me if there's a custody motion, one side should be saying, well, the 14th Amendment right to parent, as interpreted in this Supreme Court, court case, or, they would be talking about that just like they would in the Second Amendment cases. They would mention Supreme Court authority. And in those Second Amendment cases, you would see a bunch of Supreme Court citations. And yet, when they argue over the 14th Amendment right to care, custody, and control of the children, nobody ever mentions, they don't even acknowledge that it's a constitutional right. And I'm wondering, how can that be? Now, I know I'm being a little dramatic, but that's the theme of the lawsuit. Apparently, the policy in California is to not enforce the Constitution. So
Yeah,
I'm hearing an echo. Is anybody else hearing an echo?
I think we're fine. I just
Okay. Well,
wanna.
anyways, that's the point I was going to make on that.
Yeah, we are joined by more viewers, so thanks everyone. Ethan, phenomenal fighter with Jenny from the Albany area here in New York, upstate New York, joined. Ethan, I think you need to come come on the show and tell your story. He's public and again seeing results from being public. So he's saying something very interesting that I want to jump off actually. Fear is the mind killer. So what we're seeing in the public domain, right? The same propaganda, the same methods that the government is using against large segments of population. We're also seeing in private domain, so to say, or the smaller scope, which is the court, right? But the same methods undoubtedly apply, right? So if you try to demoralize the population and just brainwash them and make people feel that nothing will help, they have to comply, they have no rights. We are seeing that on a smaller scale, but exactly same. So fear, indeed, fear is probably the key tactic used by the government, right, to keep people subjugated, right? Because if you are fearful, you don't apply your faculty, your intellectual capacity, right? You just go with the survival mode. And if they keep you in fear that you will lose access to your children, they will jail you. Unfettered discretion, right? Which, in my opinion, that's tyranny, right? If you have unfettered discretion given by the judge, given to the judge, right, or assumed by the judges, then they come there, they can do whatever they want. I actually heard it from my attorney when my case started in Seattle. Like she said something when the case began, and then later into the case, I said, that's what we discussed. She said the judge can do whatever he wants, and of course that's part of the fear. But on a higher level, right? That's what we are not supposed to succumb to. We shouldn't be fearful. These people work for us. They want us to forget it, right? And fundamentally, their job is technical, right? They need to apply the law. The legislature makes the laws. They need to apply the law. But it's very clever. And going back, full circle to what you said, in my opinion, that's my firm opinion. Family courts were created in order to bypass the Constitution. It's not a bug. It's a feature. It is a feature. That's what they want to do. So, beyond the 14th Amendment and the Equal Protection Clause, right? Which I love. It's beautiful. I love it. It's a great argument, and we can talk about that. That people praise these laws of equal shared parenting. We don't need that, because our right and our children's right to have equal access to both parents is already enshrined in the Constitution, right? By the combination essentially of these two provisions, right? The 14th Amendment and equal protection, right? If there's no finding of being an unfit parent, there's no reason, no authority of a judge to take away any of your time, right? Or in any setting, or make any type of orders. So, but it is shameful that the attorneys, and again, we have rare exceptions like yourself, luckily, and a couple other attorneys that I hear about, but fundamentally, attorneys are not making the argument. I attended about 3 months ago, I believe, a Senate hearing that I keep mentioning here, and they had multiple panels of attorneys testifying in front of New York State senators, and they said, for example, oh, we don't have jury trials in New York. Why don't we have jury trials? Because you don't bring it up. We are supposed to have jury trials, right? So this whole thing was created in order to bypass the Constitution, and it's beyond the family court. We are facing. People need to understand that. I'll keep talking about that. We are facing a worldwide assault on our freedoms and liberties everywhere, and of course, family court is one of the key prongs of this assault, right, by the governments everywhere. But America stands out as essentially the last barrier between worldwide tyranny and the population, right? Precisely because of the Constitution. So they had to design it very, very carefully to erase it, right? And we lost the Sixth and Seventh Amendment, which is the jury trial is the only the only right that's mentioned twice in the Bill of Rights. I keep reminding people it's also mentioned in the Declaration of Independence. Americans went to war over that. And now we don't have it. Why? Because the court is titled differently. I had an example that I use in my papers. Tomorrow the government creates space courts, right? And they decide that astronomers need to be donated the cornea, healthy cornea from a donor, unwilling donor. So that's it. The government will be able to take your eye out in order to donate. Why? Because they created a new space court. This is ridiculous. But that's the type of argument that is being used. So not mention of the Constitution is intentional. It is intentional. I won't name names, but again, my experience with when I could afford an attorney, before I understood that they are not very helpful in many cases, that my attorney told me that if you keep mentioning the Constitution, the outcome will be even worse. So They are conditioned. Attorneys themselves are conditioned not to bring it up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's a frightening prospect. I got, can I say one thing real quick? I just wanted to add, it made me something you said. And by the way, I have to say that is really deep. The idea, the whole space court thing, the way you presented that, ladies and gentlemen, the world famous Roman brick. That was one of those really deep thoughts. But I was going to say that I had seen the movie recently, What Happens in Vegas. I don't know if you've heard of that, or if the viewers at home will recognize that. What Happens in Vegas with Cameron Diaz and who's the other? Ashton Kutcher is the other guy. And they get married and then they get divorced and they go back to New York and they have their first hearing in front of the family court judge, who is Dennis Miller plays the family court judge, right? And anyway, they get like an absurd result. I can't remember what the ruling is, but it's completely absurd. And the one guy asked the lawyer, he goes, can he do that? Totally in disbelief. Can he do that? And the lawyer says, well, yeah, he's a judge. He can do anything he wants. And I remember hearing that and thinking, wow, is that like a part of the whole government inculcation effort? They're just reminding you there's a family court judge. He can do anything he wants. And I thought, wow, the exercise of discretion has become so overbroad, so overbearing, but anyways, that's my thought. I just had to bring up that one liner. So,
Yeah, I want to acknowledge the audience again. We're getting great engagement here, so thanks everybody for watching, and please share. The only way to break out of this tyranny is just to talk about that. Break the narrative that talking and posting is more important than people realize. Because if you don't have the
mhm,
alternative to government's narrative, right? Many people who are not as well versed with what's going on, or understand the underlying ideology, they don't have an alternative worldview, and we are breaking that lies, right? The lie that's propagated by the government through propaganda, propagated through propaganda. Eric
mhm.
is mentioning the Texas Penal Code. Derek, let me pull it up. If they are not enforcing the Constitution, then by default they are breaking the law. Correct. Yeah, that's in the Constitution. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Um,
Mhm.
Winter is saying that there seems to be policy across the map to disregard the Constitution. That's what it is. Across the map, including the map outside of the US, as Matthew alluded to, that's the point of our show. We bring people from other countries. People need to realize, again, unfortunately, I'm still seeing court victims that still are trapped in that mindset that's only their county is corrupt, or only they say California is corrupt, or New York is a liberal hellhole, right? Or but Texas is a conservative state. Come on, you need to understand it's in every state, and it's in every state in the sense of a country, right? So that's why we had a guest from Netherlands, we had a guest from Canada, we have people from Australia and New Zealand who reach out, right? Um, Exotic, locations like I actually I connected to somebody who is experiencing parental alienation cross countries with South Korea, right? So it's everywhere. It's deliberate policy, like everything else, like climate change, the propaganda in schools. It's a global. I don't like the word global. It's a worldwide takeover, right? Essentially, a war declared, silent war declared by the governments against people. Kim is saying, that's good, 100%. Uh, fear, yeah, topic of fear. Winter saying fear is creeping. Um, Mary Catherine Skelly is here. Karen Cook is watching. Thank you. Vic is putting here an interesting comment. Mother government, usually here, but Big Brother, right, of the Big Father. But yeah, the government doesn't care as long as they divide and conquer. As long as one segment of the population is completely subjugated or broken, they move to the next, and happened time and time in history. I want to acknowledge Christina. Um, I keep
Mhm.
praising her writing. She's a
Yes.
very brave fighter, freedom fighter. So we need to follow each other. We need to interview each other. It's very, very important. That's how again you create, you show the reality of the atrocity, the Holocaust, and the massive scale on which it takes place, completely hidden from the public view until you experience that. And that's also by design. That's a trap. So they want to keep the trap hidden, right? Christina is saying, I don't understand the fear. Do people really understand what they're implying? Afraid of the government? And we don't have the government they program us to believe we have. Correct. It's all programming. We're talking about the US government. What's next? Yeah, next is tyranny. It happened time and time again, unless we stop it. And yeah, the government was supposed to work. That's the story we're told. The government is supposed to work for us, but it's just another lie, right? Like the judges were supposed to follow the law. I like the I actually, even though that I am very much familiar with the domain of law, I didn't realize until recently, right? Not recently, but until I became a victim, that the rule of law in itself, including the Constitution, is another deception. It's another deception because unless you are in the court, right? Unless you face these judges, you assume that you go to the court, you explain, you present your case to the judge, and it will be adjudicated according to the principle of justice, the law. But that's not the case. Rule of law is a twofold deception. It was created in order to keep people who are not yet eaten or devoured by the system, right? Keep them thinking that the government has boundaries and you have rights, but neither is true. You don't have any rights, and the government can do whatever they want. Government officials, government employees, the whole nomenclature layer can do whatever they want with you. Yeah, Eric is clarifying the statute that he quote as interference with the parent. They don't enforce it, of course. Um, yeah, Mary's saying, I'm just great participation. Thank you, folks. The movement is growing. Yeah, it's the awareness is growing. Let's see. I want to acknowledge Susan. I won't be able to read everything, but yeah. Betty is saying, jumping in late. Are you saying that they don't mention the Constitution Court? You wanna regroup on that?
Yeah. Yeah, they never mention the Constitution. It seems that that in many respects the whole system is just antithetical to the Constitution. But then once you realize that, it seems now apparent that these courts were intentionally created as a means of bypassing or circumventing, doing a collateral end run around the Constitution. But that's
Yeah.
my take.
Yeah, I want to add something else that I don't want to venture too far into the conspiracy theories realm. It's a controversial topic. Maybe not everyone in the audience is ready for that. But the Family Court Family Court Act in New York was enacted by Nelson Rockefeller. So it's the same family of Rockefellers that's behind so many institutions in our society, right? Not only in America, but in the world. And it's very logical to assume that the same ideas, the same agenda that was behind the design of the medical profession, the educational field, right, was behind family court as well. So it's very logical to assume and actually to recognize that these are all again tentacles, prongs, antennas, if you will, of the same grand plan that is being rolled out into society. Um, Ben has a great comment that I think can spur another part of the discussion. Guilty until proven innocent is what I say. It's very hard to prove your innocence, family court. Uh, Another way of saying that is that parents have less rights than criminals. And my
Yes.
my retort to that, right, or not a retort, but my explanation is that why parents are treated worse than criminals, because we are more dangerous to the regime than criminals. We present much more risk if we raise normal children. The government wants broken children. Broken children are easier again to enslave, right? And that's why they do whatever they can in order to drive a wedge to distance us from our own offspring. Matthew, I'm sorry, I'm claiming to be in in bad mood, but I talk too much for that. So please.
No, I got to say, I always enjoy listening to you speak. And for the viewers at home, Roman and I speak all the time on the phone, and some of the conversations are always very deep and certainly very interesting. And I always want to publicly acknowledge how honored I feel to be able to converse with somebody, at your stature. It really is amazing. And these topics really do need to be discussed. The guilty until proven innocent. I see Ben there. Hello. Yeah. How do you really prove that you're innocent? I mean, I think the focus question or the focus conundrum really is, how do you prove a negative? because so much of the time one party says, oh, he did so and so. Well, no, I didn't. How do you disprove something when it's only he said, she said? And I see that so frequently, in some of the cases I'm involved in. But remember, I say this all the time. Everybody has seen the Fox television show Cops, bad boys, what you gonna do? Okay. And they always say at the beginning, all suspects are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. And we get brainwashed to think that's real. Then you get into family court and they presume you're guilty. They will take away your children waiting for the hearing to happen, the hearing that hasn't happened yet. They'll take away the children in anticipation of that. But, the I was going to say the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and I hope folks look this up because I think it's important. But the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the United Nations, I think it's Rule 11 or Section 11, but it says that all persons on the planet are born with this fundamental right of innocent until proven guilty. And that's the UN Declaration for the World. And even it's in the Islamic Constitution, for example, in Iran. I think a lot of Americans may think that maybe they don't have the same amount of rights. Well, in Iran, they have an Islamic constitution, which is religious in nature, and some people, may have a problem with that. But the point is, they do recognize all persons are innocent until proven guilty, and that's a right from an Islamic country that we don't have here in America. And I think people ought to realize that because it's shocking. If you walk into court and it's completely he said, she said, there's no evidence supporting one side, there's no evidence supporting the other side, there's no witnesses, there's no photographic evidence, there's no surveillance footage, there's just one word against the other. Well, that should be a draw. If it really is a he said, she said contest, totally a push, well, that should be 50-50, and you have to reach at least preponderance 51% to prevail in a civil proceeding. But knowing that it's even a higher standard on constitutional rights like parenting, you realize he said, she said should never carry the day. But it always does in family court because the judges have an inherent conflict of interest. They can't wait to create non custodial parents who, in turn, will become child support obligors and they will earn revenue for the state. The state will be paid by the federal government if only they believe the story that, whatever you did is true, right? And then you're the bad person. They've criminalized you. They didn't have to waste any money at the DA's office. They don't have to bother incarcerating you or feeding you. They've just criminalized you on the surface. Now that's the pretext they need to take away your children. And again, you become the child support obligor. And child support is for the state, not for the ex. And people are slowly waking up to that one too. Um, but anyways, I didn't want to pontificate too much. But I've been looking. I got some messages.
You're here to pontificate, Matthew. So please do. Yeah, that's why people who are wow, we have an amazing engagement here. So over 24, at least I'm seeing on one platform are watching, and usually translates into hundreds of views. Um, Again, phenomenal participation. April is saying, let me pull the contact the comment here. Family court is very damaging to society. Should be abolished. The only question is who will abolish that, right? And because everything is subverted. Um, Justice J is saying, I had enough. It's brutal torture. That's what it is. It's torture, and it's torture by design. Uh, Mike now is saying state-sponsored kidnapping, rustling, and hustling. Yep. So actually, what you mentioned. First of all, I'm equally honored to have you as a co-host, right? So I'm not licensed in in America, but I have my legal experience, and no small part of it is unfortunately here in two states, in the state of Washington, state of New York. But having a lawyer like you, first of all, gives hope to other people, right? That and actually you're setting, if I may say so, an example for other lawyers, right? They need to speak up and need to be brave and they need to show that Constitution is not a piece of paper, right? We need to respect it. Uh, but
Mhm.
second of all, I think what we are doing here again is in some sense is very unique because this the large loose community connected via internet, which is very important, of court victims. There are a couple of topics that are often discussed, right? Corrupt courts, of course, to some degree. Parental alienation is a term that comes up all the time. But to connect the dots, right, and having people with legal knowledge actually, taking a detailed view of what's going on, what particular um, sections, right, or statutes are violated, and what particular case law is not followed, right, and what hierarchy of courts is not functioning as designed. This is very important, right, because you present evidence, so people, uh, these are two guys, three guys often, right? Two guys and a guest, a girl. We present real evidence of what's going on, so you cannot dismiss it as the Holocaust that it is, right, follows the same pattern, and the one of the final stages of any Holocaust is erasing the evidence. So we are preserving the evidence. We know what we are
Yes.
talking about. That's very important. The topic of not following the Constitution is very deep. Another thought that I posted, and I think it got great engagement, is why don't we get speedy trial in family court, right? So beyond not having the rights. So there's abundant case law stating that for a child, any period of time is much more significant than for an adult, right? So a week in child's life is especially in the growing period, right? Is a very important part of the growth. And in New York, for example, there is some sort of loose standard that cases are supposed to be finished within 6 months, but and for the public who is not engaged, it seems normal, logical, right? But the fact is, first of all, it's not followed. Second of all, there are no repercussions or any sanctions for violating that, right? Third, it's the standard is from the moment the trial starts, so you can delay the trial. And
Mhm. Mhm.
it's all very very loose, and it's not by design, again, for plausible deniability, because what's the goal of the court, family court, is to find the pretext or pretense to separate you from your children, right? Keep them as
Mhm.
far as possible for as long as possible, right? Allow the alienator to alienate, and that's it, and then hide behind the children. It's a very simple algorithm, but they deploy it in every case. They deploy it in termination of parental rights, in adoptions as well, right? At a certain time, if a child that doesn't have a contact, especially young child, with the biological parent, the government claims that okay, they need to be adopted. It's actually for their benefit, and of course there's a whole payment scheme, title 4E, behind the scheme, right? So they deploy the same tactic. It's all dragging it, denying it, for plausible deniability, and then saying, okay, the status quo that we created, right, is now used against you. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
that thing is unbelievable.
That's
The Declaration of Human Rights, UN, is an institution that came to the world scene later than the Constitution of the United States, right? To some extent, was supposed to be more advanced document, but we know that these globalist organizations are behind a lot of atrocities that are taking place in our time. So, and to whom will you turn, right, in order to enforce it? We had a guest from Europe who actually he visited the what's called the criminal court, right, the European Criminal Court, and he knows attorneys and parents who tried it, and it doesn't work. And if it works, in very rare cases, it takes years when the justice is no longer relevant. I like a particular argument; it's more of a rhetorical argument, but forceful movement of children from one group to another is a form of genocide, right? So you can
yes.
claim that
Yes. Yes.
you're forcibly, allegedly it happens right now in Ukraine, right? Again, without going political, but that's just an example. Um, but if you forcefully remove the parents, you remove children from fathers, move them to mothers, or vice versa, or you are doing it on a systemic scale between one parent to another, that's a very powerful rhetorical argument. That's a form of genocide, right? Because under the underlying principle of that is the separating the parent-child bonds. And if it's done on a massive scale, it's done in order to break the population, and it's done internally. It's done internally. I'm suffering separation in the middle of New York City, quintessential New York City, and it doesn't get any press. The only press that we are generating here, which is the way, unlike children who are separated at the border, oh, that's a huge outcry. So yeah, we can we can dedicate show after show to that, but it's important to talk about that. Just going through the
Mhm.
comments, and again, thanks everybody for watching. Matthew, we said that we'll keep this show maybe shorter than usual, even though it's painful, but we don't want to bore the
Yes.
audience. So any thoughts, to conclude it?
No, I just it's funny, but I think I just totally concur with what you're saying about you mentioned the word genocide, right? And I just have to say, uh, in the most clear and unambiguous language, yes, it's genocide because the purpose of the Holocaust, of course, is genocide. It's not power and control; those are incidental. The purpose is to wipe out people and make them not exist. And that's what happens in family court. They take the children away and they do it on a presumption. They intend to take the children away, and it's by design. They know they can just take the children away and then set it and forget it, as expression goes. And they're kind of, and they know what's going to happen. They know what seed will sprout. That the longer you leave the parents separated from the children, it gives an opportunity to foment, if you will, the parental alienation. And I think they know it. I think they have it down to a science. And, we're witnessing some of the more harsh effects of that. But yeah, the supposedly we got to keep these things under an hour. And also, I guess some of the comments are too that we got to start on time. Are some of the things that people told me, and that's usually my fault. So America, I want to be the one to take the blame on this one. But other than that, I think that's all I have on the notes and the decompression syndrome. And I just want to say again, thank you to my partner and co-host here, Mr. Roman Brick, live from New York City. So,
Thank you, T. Matthew Phillips, live from Las Vegas, Nevada, with a license in California. Before we close, I
mhm.
want to acknowledge there's a very very lively discussion in the comments. A couple of more people joined, so I see Susan, I see Kim is actively participating. Um, let me April is saying thank you, so thank you April for watching. Eric is saying that Finland surprisingly has a system that works. I'm not sure about that. Eric, if you know anyone from Finland, if you have personal familiarity, let's just please join. Let's make a show dedicated to that. I'm not familiar, and I'm not probably an example, but I have a great exposure. Those who formally follow and those who reach out privately to a very large segment of court victims across the world, and I don't think there's any one country that functions like because it's an agenda, right? Kim is saying it kills the children's spirits if not their bodies. That's exactly the coming back to the syndrome with which you started the program. Is the goal is to break you spiritually so you don't fight, right? Because it's a spiritual war essentially, not essentially. That's what it is, right? The government wants you to accept your fate because they are bound probably by some sort of karma principle that we'll discover later. But essentially, everything that's done to us is done by our own volition through our own agreement, right? So it's still we live in God's world, who created us with the freedom of choice, freedom of will, if you will, and we need to agree, we need to accept that. So if you break the spirit, you make the person accept. So that's why we need to continue fighting. We shouldn't accept this tyranny in any form. Christina is saying attempted spiritual genocide. Exactly right. Exactly right. Beautifully put.
Yes.
Um, Eric is
Thank
recommending
you.
work. There's we need to make documentaries as well.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
Winter is saying, yeah, that's how I feel. They removed my kids, and then it was like no longer existed. Yeah, it's what they do. Before we close, there's one thing that since we have an esteemed learned lawyer on the show. Uh, one thing that
Two.
going back to the
Two.
comment on well, it's I want to just briefly mention that uh, coming back to the idea that they created family courts in order to subvert, essentially to erase the constitution, is the intentional mixing between criminal court and family court. So they moved criminal cases that are supposed to be a question that's supposed to be criminal into family court, so they can impose the same consequences through family court, where there's nothing exists, no jury trial, no due process. They formalized it in New York, and I believe in many other states. In New York, they have a concept of family offense. Family offense, it's like, there's no clear example of doublespeak, Orwellian doublespeak, like family offense. So if it's an offense,
Right.
try the person in the criminal court, right? If it's family, get it to the family court. But why they created that, right? So they essentially, one of the sanctions is not a jail, but they are not pursuing jail per se. What they want is separation, breaking of the children. So they moved a case that fundamentally belongs to the criminal court, removed all types of checks and balances, right? And impose the consequences that are equally, if not more severe, harmful to children and parents through family court. This is an abomination, these family offense petitions, right? And what they impose as a sanction, it's not the punishment, and they use the communist language, essentially, right? Whitewash terms in order to hide the real intent. And again, it shows it's all deliberate. There are think tanks, smart people paid high government salaries, think about that, design it. And to finish with the reference that unfortunately every thinking individual need to make, the one Zai protocols, the final solution that the small mustache man designed, right, in the previous cycle of this tyranny, the protocols that came out of the conference of the high-ranking German officials at the time were not discovered until a couple of years after the war. I made a post about that, right? And only afterward it was designed. So they made very few copies. One of the copies survived, and it showed that they have a premeditated plan. I am absolutely sure that what we're experiencing is scripted to the tiniest detail. They know what they
Yes.
can do and cannot
Yeah.
do to us.
Yeah.
There's a secret protocol that they all follow. They consult with each other. It's all by design, beyond the laws. People don't know even stuff that's on the surface, right? Title 4D. I spoke to an attorney who said, no, I'm not that cynical. I don't think the Title 4D actually governs that. No, it does, right? So, and we'll discover one day when we regain, as we the people, access and control over our courts, we'll see it all. And beyond the God sees it all. This torture of children and parents on a massive scale, thousands of people, millions of people throughout the history of this subverted institution, right? It cannot go forever. Even the Third Reich did not go forever. They thought it's what was the title, the slogan that they
1,000 years.
forever. Yes, 1,000-year
Year
Reich.
Reich.
So, right. So we are now in the fourth industrial revolution, right? And it will not last for that many years. And I think the participation we're seeing here, programs that you and I are doing, the technology, right? The bravery of people who actually follow each other's lead. That's what will bring the journey to its knees as it's supposed to be. Thanks, everybody. I apologize if I couldn't mention everybody's names, but it's great participation. Please share the stream and the screen. We try to make the show on every Thursday at roughly at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. California/Nevada time. So thanks, everybody. We'll jump off here. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
Thank you.